Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that US dollar is no longer the world's currency. That means no more printing money to cover our debts, no more endless government spending, no more cheap imports from China. It also means your money might not be worth as much as you think. See, right now, the US dollar isn't just our currency, it's the world's currency. And countries everywhere use it for trade, government stockpile it, and America, well, we get to borrow it endlessly without consequences. But what if that changed? What if China, Russia, and the rest of the world decided that they're done with the dollar? Would we see a financial collapse, a new global currency, a return to gold and silver? Today, we're breaking down what would happen if the US lost its world currency status and why some countries are already making moves to make that happen. Alright, first off, what is the world reserve currency? Here's the quick version. A world reserve currency is a default money used for international trade, investments, and global debt. For 80 years, that's been the US dollar. Before that, it was British pound, before that, French franc, and so on and so on. The average lifespan of a world reserve currency, about 80 to 100 years. And guess what? We are right at the end of that timeline. And once that country loses its reserve currency status, their economy never looks the same again. Let's rewind back to 1944 and look how the US dollar became the global king. At the end of World War II, global economies were a mess, and the US had the strongest economy and the most gold reserves. So the world leaders made a deal. The US dollar would become a global standard for trade. Countries would peg their currencies to the dollar instead of gold, and the US promised to keep dollar backed by gold. So everybody trusted it, except in 1971, the US did the ultimate plot twist. We dropped the gold standards altogether. That means that since then, the dollar isn't backed by anything at all, just trust, debt, and military power. And once that trust disappears, well, so does the dollar's power. Well, right now, countries like China, Russia, and even US allies are actively working to move away from the dollar. China is pushing the yuan as a global trade currency. Russia is selling oil in rubles and gold instead of dollars. BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are launching their own trade agreements without the dollar. And let's not forget central bank digital currency. Over 130 countries are developing digital currencies. And if the world moves to digital money controlled by central banks, the US dollar could be completely bypassed. And when that happens, well, America loses the biggest financial advantage it's ever had. So let's say it happens. The US loses its dollar currency status. What happens next? Well, for one, inflation skyrockets, way worse than now. US prints trillions of dollars to fund governmental spending. And right now, other countries buy those dollars. If they stop, all that extra money floods back to the US, causing hyperinflation. Let's look at example, the Venezuela's currency that lost 99% of its value after losing global trust. Two, America can't borrow cheap money anymore. Well, right now, the US borrows at a near zero interest rates because the world needs dollars. If the dollar loses power, interest rates of the US debt would spike, and they would spike fast. Already, US pays $1 trillion a year in interest only. Imagine if that doubled. And you would have the cost of everything go up. So no more cheap imports from China, goods would cost way more. Things like oil, food, electronics, everything imported becomes ridiculously expensive. You complain about that $5 Starbucks coffee? Try 15. And stock market collapse and real estate panic. The US stock market runs on foreign investment. If dollar loses values, well, stocks tank. Real estate loses foreign buyers and the economy would stall. Foreign investors over $7 trillion in US assets. And if they decide to sell, that's how you make the economic crisis that made 2000 look mild. Could the US really lose reserve status? Here's the truth. It won't happen overnight because the dollar is still used in about 80% of global transactions. But it's already happening slowly. More countries are trading in alternative currencies. And if the US keeps printing money and ranking up debt, the world will eventually lose trust. And once that trust is gone, well, so is the dollar's reign. Well, what can you do? Hedge against inflation. If the dollar weakens, hard assets like gold and real estate become more valuable. Diversify your investments. If foreign money leaves the US markets, and stocks will crash, so don't put all your money there. And lastly, pay attention to global finance moves. BRIC nations are expanding. China is pushing the digital yuan. And if you're not watching these moves, you're already behind. Because once America loses financial power, it's not just economic crisis, it's a global power shift. The US dollar ruled the world for 80 years, but nothing lasts forever. And when the world finally moves on, will you be ready, or will you be left holding a worthless piece of paper? This is Thrive Network. Comment, like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.